In its shortest definition, evolution is the change of gene and trait distributions within the population over generations. Each step in this definition is essential to evolution. Population, populations, not individuals, that have changed over the course of evolution. So the singular never evolved, and never will. Individuals do not evolve, they develop. However, populations formed by all individuals of a species will have different distributions of traits in each generation compared to the previous generation. This is evolution, and it is studied by a branch of science called evolutionary biology. Changing populations is not evolution. Gene and trait distributions, what happens in evolution is not necessarily the transformation of one species into another. What changes in evolution is the distribution of genes or traits in populations. For example, if the frequency of genes related to height in a population has increased from 5% to 7% as you pass from one generation to the next, that population has evolved. Speciation is an inevitable consequence of evolution, however, speciation is not necessary to talk about evolution. Change in generations. At least one generation must pass in order to talk about evolutionary change. No change that an individual undergoes in his own lifetime is evolutionary. The changes we go through in our lifetime are called development. Evolutionary biology and developmental biology are two different fields of biology. There are several elements that this definition excludes and does not take into account. Emphasizing these will further clarify evolutionary concepts. Vitality. Modern definitions of evolution do not always place special emphasis on vitality, because if there is a population consisting of individuals with certain characteristics and the characteristics that define the individuals of this population have the quality of being passed on to the next generation, those individuals can evolve even though they cannot be defined as living in the traditional sense. For example, viruses are not alive, but they can evolve. For example, even individuals completely simulated in a computer environment, although not living, can evolve and produce more successful products through evolutionary change than human engineering has been able to produce. In addition to these, evolutionary changes are also used in other branches of science that are not always directly related to life, such as cultural evolution, chemical evolution, geological evolution, and astroevolution. Speciation and macroevolution. Sometimes evolution is briefly defined as the transformation of one species into another. However, this is not the definition of evolution, but the result. Although describing the formation process of the lake as the closing of a pit by filling with water gives an idea of the process, it does not explain how this process of closing by filling with water takes place. The process is better explained by the fact that the water drops flowing down from the region where the lake will be formed gradually accumulate in this pit and fill the pit. Similarly, the definition of evolution we made above, that is, the change of gene and trait distributions within the population over generations, accumulates in the long term and under different environmental conditions and forms new species. But as we have said, this is the result of evolution, not the definition. Microevolution, given enough time, gives birth to macroevolution. From this point of view, evolution is usually the change in genotype in the short term, and generally in the phenotype depending on these gene changes in the long term. Fossils and transitional types. Evolution is defined through genes, not through fossils or transitional species. Although fossils provide indisputable evidence of macroevolution, we do not need fossils to determine the evolutionary process. In other words, even if we had no fossils, we would have been able to prove evolutionary change based only on our observations of nature, genetic data, and the field of mathematical evolution.